Today we're unboxing and taking the first look at the XTOOL M1, which is a laser processing, which means engraving and laser cutting, as well as a blade cutting device. So stay tuned. So I just pulled this out of the box and removed the plastic film off the top, and I haven't done much else. On that plastic film there is a sticker that says it's a 10 watt, so I'm going to assume 10 watt laser, but we'll get into the specs in a moment. Inside here, we've got a bulk of foam, and within this is a thank you letter and the manual. Looks like there's a couple different materials to cut and engrave. So we've got some vinyl here, another piece of vinyl it looks like with sticky backing. This is actually like a fabric, not a vinyl. Well, vinyl fabric, vinyl as in sticker, and then it looks just like a sheet of paper with a adhesive backing, and then like balsa wood, basswood it says, balsa wood, and there's also a little keychain in here so we can put Fido's name on there or something with the laser engraver. So there's also a cutting tool replacement blade, it says, 5 pieces. And in the manual it does say that you can cut material up to 1.5 millimeters thick. We have a kind of corrugated vent tube. So this is going to be for the air purification that hooks on the back there. There's the shroud for that tube, the exhaust, and a spring clamp. A couple screws, thumb screws, power cord, power brick, and a USB-B cable, so printer style USB cable. There's also, it looks like a lubricant or grease of sorts, but it's not labeled really otherwise. And that's it for there. Inside here there still is one longer piece of foam. It fell out as I pulled it out. And inside that is, it says triangular prism. They just seem like triangular standoffs of sorts. And they're aluminum or some sort of metal. So I guess the idea is you could have your material across here so that there's airflow underneath. Just kind of raising it off. Oops, raising it off like a little kickstand of sorts. So also in the back here, there's the cutting head or the tool head. And it's held in place with this piece of foam, so I've just wiggled it out. And on the bottom are 2 more sheets here, kind of like those little cutting grid sheets. So there's one that says fabric grip and one that says light grip. So the pink is the fabric grip. So after reading through the first few pages of the manual, there was no mention of this goo. So I still don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure it's a lubricant of sorts. Before I get started, we're going to be doing most of this on the back. The machine's not super heavy, it's just more awkward than anything. It's heaviest on the back side. On the back we have this kind of aircraft connector. They call this an extension cable. Then we've got our power, we've got USB, and then we've got, of course, our power switch. And then these thumb screws that we saw here are to hold the fan duct or shroud here onto here. So we should be able to just screw these in. And in the manual, it did point out the components of the laser tool head. And there's 2 different configurations if you have a 5 watt or a 10 watt. So based on the sticker on the top and the configuration of our tool head there, we have the 10 watt installed. For now, this isn't going to connect to anything on the other end. We do have another box there with the air purifier, but I'm just going to attach it to the back of the machine here. Put this clamp on first. So the manual tells us we're going to install a blade, and it gets installed into this little brass looking piece here. So just grab the kind of knurled finish and pull it out. It's just magnetically held in there. So back in that package of blades that I mentioned earlier, you're going to remove one of the blades, and they have a protective cap on the actual cutting portion. So carefully remove that cap, don't stab yourself. And the dull pointed or triangular portion gets inserted into this bottom hole here, and it magnetically kind of snapped right into place with just the tip exposed. and then I'm going to slide this back in, and this will magnetically attach back to the tool head. So now that we've installed the cutting head there, we've connected the power supply to the back of the machine and turn on the power until this lights up solid white. So now that the light is white, the machine is on and ready. There's a little light illuminating the bed here, or the area, the cutting area, and a little laser light kind of in the center of that area. And the tool has homed itself into this back corner here. So at this point, we're ready to go. So as you may have noticed in the intro, we had a bunch of other boxes here. So this is the main unit. Those other boxes were some different add-ons. So much like you could set this up to blow out a window or something if you were doing laser engraving, you know, you're not going to need this for cutting really. That might not be acceptable for your situation. You know, we don't have a window here. So there is an air purifier option that will filter the air that's coming out of here. Likewise, there's an option to extend the base here to rise this machine up to allow you to put larger objects underneath the tool head. So right now, you know, those flat pieces of stock that we can engrave on, those will be fine. I'm not sure the exact Z height that you can fit there, but if you wanted to engrave on like a mug or large glass or something, you're not going to have the height to be able to do that right now. And so that option would allow you to extend that height for your particular situation.
Hey guys, it's the other Jason from 3D Printing Canada. I know Jay started you on the XTOOL laser. I decided to jump in because I wanted to show you a couple of extras. So the XTOOL system as they have has actually a couple of nice neat little features that they have. Yes, you get a basic laser when you buy the starter package. It's capable of vinyl cutting, laser cutting, etching, engraving. I'm going to show you some of the neat things that I've made with it in the time I've had to tinker with it. But I just want to take a little bit of time and just show you guys how to do some of the upgrades in it. The XTOOL itself does have the capability of using a spindle or a fourth axis to be able to do engraving on cups and things like that. We haven't gotten that one today, but we do have actually everything else in their lineup. So to introduce to what's going on, the first part that we have here is what they call the extension kit or the riser kit. This is going to actually get installed underneath the XTOOL, so we're going to raise it up in case you want to do large items. Larger wooden boxes, things like that, basically anything thicker than a couple of pieces of cardboard. You're going to want to have the riser kit installed. When we get through that, I'll kind of show you how to calibrate it and how to decide how to calibrate the focal length of the laser for the items that may change inside of the box. So we'll get into a little bit of that in a moment. The other item that we're going to also install is going to be the air injection system, which is going to install inside of the machine just next to the laser cutting head. Now essentially what it is, it pumps fresh air from the pump that's located outside the unit through the hose that connects it back up to give a constant supply of fresh air around the laser itself. Now that serves a dual purpose. A, it keeps the path of the laser cleaner, so there's no soot, smoke, anything like that in the area, so your actual cut itself is going to be cleaner. The second dual purpose to that is it actually keeps the laser lens cleaner. So it reduces the number of times you have to clean it, wipe it, change the lens or anything in it that you might have to. So that's a couple of purposes for this here. Finally, if you get the full outfitted package from the XTOOL, it will include all of these items, and it will also include the air filtration system as well. So this air filtration system, similar to the XTOOL, also comes ETL certified, safe for use in Canada. It comes with a cartridge unit inside. It is not HEPA. So you may still track a little bit of odor through it, but it does actually pick up all the smoke particulate that may be expelled in the laser cutting process. And it actually does that very, very well. As I was using this unit, I did notice sometimes there was a little bit of an odor. Depends on how stinky it was that an item I was cutting. So sometimes you'll still catch a little bit of the odor, but none of the smoke or anything else like that was able to get out of the unit to see to be able to see it anywhere in the environment. So the easiest thing to add in first is going to be our air filtration unit. So I'm going to show you how that's installed. Essentially, with the air filtration unit, or with the laser unit, you're going to get one hose. You're also going to get the little plastic boot back here, which looks very similar to this one on the side. It attaches to the back of the unit. This is going to go from the back of the laser unit to the top of the filtration unit. This is your input here. If you're okay with exhausting this straight into the room, you can do it here. If not, there is a second piece of hose that comes with it. You can attach it onto here and you can run the hose wherever you want it to be. So in this particular case, I'm going to show you how this hooks up. We're going to use the spring clamp here, attach this to the back of our air outlet, and we're simply going to let the clamp go to hold it on the back of the unit. Now, to adapt this to the top here, there's actually a little adapter that's included that's just going to fit inside of this. Now this does have a little bit of a flexibility if you want to change the angle on it. It's not much, but it's a little bit there. I've just grabbed a couple of gear clamps out of the shop here. There are some that come with it, but I'm just trying to reduce the difficulty on screen, so I just grabbed a couple with thumb screws on them. So once you put this on over top, you're just simply going to tighten the edges of your clamps down. And once you have that attached onto here, goes into the top of your air filtration unit. You're going to install your power adapter or your power cord, which is over on this side. Turn it on and adjust from 0 to 100% here in the front, and the red light will come on variable depending on how strong you have the fan set to. So if it's very, very bright, the fan is operating in a strong nature. So that being said, we're going to be right back. I'm going to move this here off the table, kind of get cleaned up a little bit, and we're going to move on to the air injection installation. The first step in installing the air injection system in this unit is what we're going to have to do is pull this base plate out, which I've already removed all the screws around the perimeter that you need to get out in order to remove this. The second part of this process you have to do is you have to install these hose hangers all the way around, and we will get back into those later when we actually start routing the hose for this unit itself. We're essentially going to pull this head out, and the next shot you see, we're going to be looking at it from the bottom. It recommends that you pull the cutter head out of the way, simply to allow for clearance for other things to occur in here, and we'll get into that once we get onto the bottom. In this package is what held all of the brackets that I pointed out to you earlier as to what actually holds the air pipe. So they include a couple of these, and what these are actually for are basically holders for the nozzle. So when you stick this on the side of your laser cutter, if you're not using the air injection system on that particular cut, you can store your nozzle safely out of the way, and it's not going to get in the way of the moving system or the gantry system of the actual laser itself. So I like the fact that they actually include not only what's needed, but they also include a spare in there as well. There's, in this small package here, there's some extra O-rings, some other extra assorted parts, the lens covers in case yours does end up getting dirty or scratched, you can replace it. You have spares that come with it, are all included in the one package. So the installation process itself is pretty easy. Looks a little complicated when you're first doing it, but once you've gone through it, it's okay. So the reason why the tweezers are included in this kit is because using the tips of the tweezers, inside here there's two holes. There's a small dimple here and a small dimple here in this brass ring. And the ring itself is what you're going to unscrew, and you're essentially going to replace it with one of these. In this has a magnet in it, and with the magnet is what the actual head holds on to, and that's what actually keeps it attached to the bottom of the machine. So we're going to install this first, and we'll show you how easy it's going to be, as long as you don't drop that ring inside of the head, which we'll get out in a moment. So first part of the process is, this is your actual vinyl cutting head. Out of the bottom of this cutting head, the actual cutting knife blade is sticking out about 1/4 of an inch. And if you happen to not pay attention and you happen to strike that, that'll cut pretty deep. Now the nice part about this XTOOL unit is this is actually held in with a magnet. So while you're working down here in this unit, let's just take the cutting head and we'll just place it out of the way. Now, as a side note, while you have this air injection unit on here, you actually have to leave the cutting head off as well. They can't both operate in tandem. There's only so much square footage down here on the bottom of this head. So with a very small screwdriver, I already have the small screw down here removed. We're going to remove the very tiny screw up here on this factory installed ductwork, because we're no longer going to require this. So once we pull this out of the way, I'm going to set that aside. This is going to expose everything on the bottom. We've got the cutter out, the blower duct is off. Next, we're going to use our tweezers. We're going to put a tip of the tweezer into each side of this brass ring, and we're going to simply just use it as a tool to unscrew this brass ring. So once you've got the brass ring unscrewed, you can simply take that and set it aside, as you won't need that anymore. You're going to grab one of these new trim pieces and you're going to thread that back up into the same hole. Now, at the same time, in here there's a lens for the laser. Make sure that that lens stays perfectly flat and it's not kind of falling out of the way or is falling on angle. That does have to be perfectly flat as you're screwing this cover back in. Now, when you screw this new replacement lens cover in, you're going to screw it down so that it's snug. And what you want is you want one tab going straight up this way, and you want the other tab heading straight down the other way. So with those two tabs in that orientation, you're going to see that with this air injection nozzle, it's going to fit on over top of it, and it's going to magnetically attach to that laser. And it's going to give you the spot here where the hose will always come in the same direction. You don't want that twisted left or right, because there's other things down here you want to try and keep clear. So it's important to keep the range of that hose restricted. Okay, that being said, let's attach our hose to this bracket, or to the nozzle. We're going to grab our hose up this way, attach that on over the nozzle so everything's sitting the way it should, and we're going to flip the machine down and we'll see where we go next. So now that we have the lens adapter installed on the bottom of the print head, we essentially have the machine flipped back over. We have our hose here installed, and as we had pointed out earlier, the nozzle, the assisted air nozzle assist, is essentially a magnetic device that's going to attach to the bottom of that head. So as it's printing, this is the configuration it's going to be. Now, to ensure for routing of the hose, we've already pre-installed these brackets that go all the way around the edges of the machine, and I'll show you what they're for. When you bring this head all the way forward to the front of its extent, you're then going to take this hose, bring the head as far away from it as where it's going to be. You're going to bring this hose and you're going to start laying it inside of this bracket. Now what I do is I grab the small screwdriver that comes with it, and I just use it to push it down into that little trough so that it kind of snaps in place. Now, at this point, we're going to move the head out of our way. This hose is actually going to drop down through the inside of the carcass. And when we put our build plate back in, the build plate goes in this orientation, but what you'll notice is there's a notch in the very front corner here. So when this build plate gets inserted, the hose has a place to exit the bottom of the laser cutter, so that it can exit out into the pump. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this through the bottom. So now that we have our hose routed, we know that it can cover the entire print area in the laser cutter. You may be asking yourself, what's the purpose of these brackets that are over here on this side? Well, if you come into an instance where you don't need the air assist, you could disconnect the air assist hose, and these are strictly for storage. Now, I can actually give myself a little bit more hose here in this particular case. And we can put it up here for storage. Now, in my particular case, it'll sit here just fine. In the kit, there's actually a bracket that if you require to actually sit this in a bracket and house it somewhere, you can store this here and you can actually attach it onto the machine again if you want to leave a little bit of extra hose. Okay? In my particular case, because the hose is stiff, I'm just going to sit it in this bracket and let it sit under the corner for when it's not needed. That way it's stored up and out of the way. Okay? So at this point, what we're going to do is we can lay our base plate back in. There we go. Just kind of laying it back in place. So our hose is going to go through the hole down here on the bottom. We can then reinsert all of our screws if we're not going to be using the extension kit with this. In this particular laser cutter, I'm going to be setting it up with the extension kit. So we'll take this back out for the next step, just so you can see the next step in the process. So one final note, when you do install this hose all the way down into magnetic, clamp it onto the bottom here. Make sure you run the hose up through this bracket here on the side. This also comes in the kit. So it's going to come down and clamp through the side of this, and then your hose is going to magnetic onto the very bottom of your nozzle. So the final part of the equation is now we have our hose coming out the side of the laser cutter here. This is our actual external pump assembly. This pump assembly is standard 110 volt. It has an adjustable rheostat on the side of it, so you can adjust how strong you want it to pump. The last two parts of this assembly are here in the kit. I'm going to take this adapter and I'm going to take our silicone sleeve. Just move this out of the way for a moment. At the end of our hose, we're going to insert this fitting into the end of it, and it's going to grab. If you ever want to pull this out, you're simply going to do this, and the same as what you would on most 3D printers. You're going to pull this blue collar down, and then the hose will release out of that fitting. We're going to insert it, make sure it goes all the way down, it fits tightly. We're going to put that inside the silicone sleeve, like this. And then on our pump, we have the output line here for our pump, which is where that sleeve is going to reattach right down the other side. And that's the total assembly of this unit is done. Now, should you ever need to change the filters or anything in this, if you lift up the top cover, there's a small particulate filter in here which you may have to change. And the other ones are located here on the bottom, so you'll have to remove all of these screws at the bottom. And in your kit, it does have replacement filter media that you can insert this should you ever need to. If you find your air pressure is low, or it sounds like the pump is struggling a little bit trying to get enough air to move through it, if you're in a very dusty environment, have a look at this filter, and if it ever does need to be changed, there's a couple of spares in the kit. So that completes the part of the install for the air assist. When we get things rearranged here a little bit, we're going to come back and we're going to add the height, the riser kit to it, so we can start doing some bigger, taller parts. Okay, so now that we have the air assist kit installed in the XTOOL laser, The one other option that people may be looking into, or if you've got the full kit will actually be included with, is the laser extension kit. Now, this extension kit has a couple of advantages to it. A, it gives you more working area within the laser itself, so you can print deeper items. With the system that they have on this, system actually comes with these little hold downs. So they go inside of the honeycombs on the base plate. And if you have anything in here, I'm going to use this for an example. If you have thin paper or thicker plastic, you can lay it down here and you can actually use these magnetic clips to actually hold things in place for you while the laser is working. Some very nice touches that they have within this kit. They do come with 4 of these. Just showing you for an example right now. But this kit essentially comes in 5 pieces. So it has your actual honeycomb wafer, which is going to be the adjustable part on any of these rails that are within this system itself. These are your 2 side pieces, which essentially are going to come in on the left and the right side of the laser itself. These are the 2 drop-in panels, which are colored and tinted to prevent the laser energy from coming outside of the machine. So if the laser happens to cut into something shiny, it gets deflected, it gets absorbed by this rather than allowing it to come out into the room. So these are very important to have in place at any point in time you're operating the laser, as well as I personally would recommend to actually have a set of laser glasses on as well, just again for that extra level of protection. So for right now, the install process in this is actually fairly easy. We're going to move this out of the way for right now. This is actually just a kind of a gravity kit, which means there's no nuts or bolts to put it together. You're going to simply lay them roughly the correct distance apart. You're going to take your panel, slide it in the front. You're going to take your second panel, slide it in the back. Push them together so that they're roughly square. And there's 4 feet on the bottom of the XTOOL laser that are actually going to lay directly into these holes on the top. Now, if you're wondering if there's a left and a right, there is. If I pull this side here off for a moment, you're going to see that there's a hole here with a rubber grommet in it. This hole is actually meant for the hose for the air injection system, the air assist system. So this is what's meant to come out of this side. The way I have it rigged up, it's going to be exiting the front right of the machine. So I'm setting up the air hole on the front right of the extension kit. Now, with that set up like that, all we are going to do, I'm going to drop the hose in here for right now, just so that it doesn't affect anything as I'm moving things over. Drop the lid on my XTOOL. Lift this up and simply lay it right on top. As you square it up, you'll actually feel the rubber feet fall into the holes. Now again, this is just a gravity mounted system. So this is not something you're going to be able to pick up and move in one unit. This now becomes something you're going to want to move in 2 pieces. The top unit as your main laser, and you can move the bottom piece after you've disassembled it again. The final step to the installation on this is if we slide up our door here in the front, it comes with this honeycomb that we're going to slide in on any one of our levels. There's screws here in the back that will decide how far back into the unit it's allowed to go. Once that's complete, we'll have to take the base plate out of our XTOOL and we'll have to transpose it into the very bottom of our bracketry. So once you have the base plate removed from the XTOOL upper unit, to prevent the laser from going all the way through to your table or affect anything in the surrounding area, this plate needs to be removed from here and is now reinserted into the very bottom kit, very bottom slides in the riser kit. Now bear in mind, There's actually two sets of slide. There's a small slide down here for this plate. The shelf just above it is for this honeycomb piece, should you want to move it down to that level. So you have to make sure that you have the room for both. Never operate the machine without this very lower plate in place. Now, with this being said, let's get this out of the way. We're going to pull our hose out here. We're going to again pull down on this blue collar. And we're now going to pass this behind the rails on the inside. So once we have this in place, we're going to put our rubber grommet back in. Going to reinstall this onto our blue fitting. We're going to install our little hold down clamps onto our honeycomb screen just so we don't lose them. And then we can go ahead and insert this into the XTOOL. And always make sure we put our protective plexiglass panel in. So right now this machine is ready to go for anything that you want to be able to do, tall or short. There is an important part that when you're using this XTOOL that we'll run through in detail right now, and that's about the focal length of the laser on this device. So now we've switched to inside of the XTOOL laser. This we have installed right now, our riser kit, so that we have the ability to print taller items. Now, with the regular base plate in there, this machine is automatically calibrated to be able to print between 0 millimeters and 30 millimeters of focal length. Now, within the kit, there's actually this handy dandy gauge that is within this, that comes in the box to make sure that you're at least within the focal range of the item. So as long as the measuring point for this device comes between 0 and 30, the XTOOL itself can automatically adjust the focal length of the laser to be able to optimize where your burn point is going to be. In order for the XTOOL to be able to see that range, you must be within that range at the measuring point. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say that I wanted to engrave or cut something on the top of the spool of this filament. I would lay my filament, or whatever the object is I'm going to laser cut. I'm going to lay it on top of our riser plate. I'm going to use our gauge and I'm going to lay it on top of the device or on top of the item that we're cutting. And I'm going to simply press it to the cutting head with one finger. The top edge of this cutting head must fall somewhere within this range, or the print head will not be able to adjust to cut it. So to give you an example of what I mean, if I remove this item and I replace it with a tall box. Now, if I want to cut the top of this, I'm going to lay my device on here, and you're going to see that the top of this laser cutter does not fall anywhere within this gauge on the XTOOL ruler. That means that at its current configuration, I would not be able to cut or etch anything into the top of this box. Aside from the fact that the laser head can't actually move over top of the box, but I'm trying to show you what it has to be within this range. Okay? If you happen to get into the idea where the item is too short, so let's say that your measuring device ends up in a configuration like this, where it's too short, the laser cannot get a focus point on that device, XTOOL has a solution for that. They have included with the kit some of these trapezoidal rods. So you can lay the rods on your base and raise it up a couple of millimeters to be able to try and get it closer to your focal point or get it within the focal range of the laser itself. So the base plate doesn't have to be exact. It's adjustable by shelf, and if you need to do some micro adjustments within it, you use the triangular rods that lay in place. Now, if it's a heavy item or something that has some sag in the middle, you can use several rods and it will hold it. Again, they're all machined to be the same height. If you find that one set of rods is not quite enough, you can set them up in different configurations so that you can build up to get the exact focal point or as close to a focal point as what you require. So that when you actually lay your item on there, it is laying down, it's supported, and your focal point will be correct within that gauge. Okay, so in the next segment of this video, we're actually going to be walking through the software that's used to operate and do the engraving operation within the XTOOL. Before we jump into the software, I just want to show you the best way of installing things into this particular device. So if we just pull out these 4 clamps for right now, I'm going to be relying on cardboard for a fair bit of my cutting. And I don't want it to move. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay my cardboard box in here that I'm going to be engraving onto. And I'm going to use these clamps to hold the edges of the box down so that it doesn't go anywhere while I'm moving, while I'm cutting. Now, bear in mind, you can cut in this vinyl with the actual cutter wheel. You can do wood, you can do polyvinyl, you can do any number of materials, cardboard, construction paper, all those kind of things. I'm going to be doing my example here. I'm going to do a couple of examples for you out of different materials. But for the purposes of the video, I'm going to be basically focusing primarily on a box. It's going to be the easiest thing to cut and see the instant response. So when we come back, we'll be in the software, and I'll explain to you how to set it up and get things going for you properly.
Okay, everyone. So once you have your XTOOL desktop laser machine set up, you're going to hook a USB cable into your computer for initial connection and setup. First place you're going to have to come is to XTOOL.com. Once you come to XTOOL.com, you're going to look for a link here on the top that says Software. Once you click on Software, it's going to bring you to this download page for the XTOOL Creative Space. Click on the download button. It'll bring you to the bottom where you have to click on your appropriate OS. In my case, it's going to be Windows. Click on Windows. It's going to prompt me to download the software. I'm going to put it in my Downloads folder. And then we're going to do the install. Once you start the install of your software, it's going to prompt you to select an install location. This is going to be pretty familiar to anybody who's installed software in Windows before. Let this install finish, and we're going to launch our software. Once the software loads up, it's going to give you a couple of intro pages. You're going to hear your XTOOL beep on the side, just to let you know the communication has started. And up here in the upper right corner, you're going to see your laser cutter, and you're going to see the connection method. Now, you can do this wirelessly as well. In my particular case, for the purposes of this video, I am doing it via USB. You have all functionality both ways. So what you're seeing here is essentially the picture of the camera that's being utilized inside the X cutter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load a piece of material in here, and I'm going to retake this picture, and let you see what it looks like. Okay, so now that we have our software installed and running, let's try and do our first burn. So because it's coming up on Halloween, I'm going to go select an image that I've downloaded off the net. So we're going to go to desktop. I have some XTOOL items in here. Now, the XTOOL software can accept multiple formats. They can use SVG, DXF, a couple of the file formats that are available. So I'm going to select the DXF file. You can use this one for laser cutting, vinyl cutting, anything like that that's very two-dimensional and you just want one clean cut on the edge. I'm going to select my Ghoul Smile. I'm going to select Open. Now, it's going to import it here just into the upper left corner on your screen. You can scale this to whatever size you want. You can remain to have your file complete. You can actually separate these as well as different items, and you can kind of move them around a little bit. That'll be a little bit of the experimentation that you can do with it after you get the software up and running. So the major question is, now that I have my design, where am I going to put it or what am I going to do? So if you come up here to the upper right corner, you're going to click on Refresh for your M1 laser. It's going to capture the image of whatever is sitting on the bed plate within the laser bed. So once you highlight this, you can highlight all your items. You can now resize them and have them and place them anywhere on the object that you have sitting in the on the cutting table. Down the right side, you're going to select all your options. So with the object setting, we're going to want it to output on all of these cuts. Our setting is going to be manual. This is just default. My power setting for this particular item, I would set it at about 10%. It's always best to do it at a lower power range first. See how it's going to turn out, and if you have to turn up the power a little bit, or maybe you have to do a second pass on it, you can always redo that, because as long as you don't disturb any of this, when you go to recut it again, it will end up cutting in the exact same way that it did before. So with that being said, these are our default items. We're just telling it to score. There are different settings for engrave, if you wanted to actually fill in the eyes, fill in the mouth down here, or if you wanted to actually cut it straight out, in which case you'll have to adjust the power to your laser up for it to be able to cut through the material that you want. In my particular case, I just wanted to score. So when I click on processing here, I get a little error message up here. It says processing exemptions may occur with material thickness being 0. So it changes the screen over here and it gives you a couple of more options. So again, I can pull down this option. I'm going to laser on a flat object. I can laser on a cylindrical object, which means that if you're using the rotate or the 4th axis option that you may have purchased with this item, open plane, blade cut, or print and a blade cut. So in my case, I'm just going to do a laser flat. I'm going to keep it simple in this case. For my material, I need to tell it what I'm cutting. So I'm cutting a 3.5 millimeter thick corrugated paper sheet. The height raised question is asking you whether or not you've had to use those triangular risers that I pointed out in the last part of our video. I've either used the triangular prisms or I have not. In my particular case here, I'm laying this directly on the background, so the laser can figure out its own focal point very, very quickly. The processing path will be left as auto planning, and then I'm going to ask it to go ahead and process. Now, once it's processed, it's going to show you exactly what it's going to do. This is just an overlay. It's not telling you where it's going to be or how deep it's going to cut. This is just going to tell you the path it's going to follow. Now, with this process, you're going to come up, the last step to this is going to be to click on Start. Now, when you click on Start, it's going to upload that file to the XTOOL laser device. Once you've uploaded that to it, the XTOOL will not start cutting automatically. You must be in front of the device when it starts to cut. So what's going to happen, there's a single button on the front of the XTOOL. You're going to have to press that button in order for the laser cutting to actually start. Once you've pushed that button, it's going to check all of its self-checks, make sure the lid's closed, make sure everything's safety and enclosed on it. Once that's done, it will go ahead and proceed with the cutting operation, and then it will return here and it will end the operation, and you can see your space again.
Now, while this operation is occurring, you're doing this into cardboard, so you may get a little bit of a burn smell if you're not using the filter on this. This is one of the reasons why it does tell you not to leave the unit unattended while cutting, and it does give you a warning in the corner. This one is complete after 34 seconds. I'm going to click on OK. I'm going to refresh my picture. So we can actually see that our picture, when we look at our cut device inside the X1 tool, that it actually did cut a little bit light. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my light power to 10%. Leave my speed at speed went to 80. And then I'm going to process this again. So now with the second pass, it did actually cut my lines in a little bit deeper. I'm going to go add another image into here. Again, I'm going to select a DXF file that I've downloaded off the internet. Give it a second to upload. I'm going to position it roughly where I want it to be. Place it over the box where we want it. And now we're going to choose for it to process this. I had a lot of fun playing with this machine. I was taking a lot of blank cardboard boxes and making random things out of them. The capabilities of this machine really impressed me. It impressed me more than I kind of thought it would. I've seen quite a few laser cutters. This one here actually does what it says it's going to do. Their software is intuitive, it's easy to use. You can switch back and forth between materials from vinyl to laser cut to different strengths of laser cut, etching versus cutting very, very easily. It's a kind of a switch in the software, either number of passes or you can do it based on strength of laser. So with this particular one here, I took our blank cardboard box and I just put a couple of little, kind of funny sayings on it. I labeled my flaps, and everything was very, very point and click, as you saw in the last segment. Very intuitive. The camera in it is outstanding. I found once in a while you might want to try a test piece on it, because it depends on how deep the item is set up within the laser. The camera comes at it from a frontal view, so as you move this down or up a little bit on the camera, it does kind of askew a little bit with the visibility of what the letters are going to be. So some of them moved a little bit, but sometimes you just need a trial run at it, and you will get used to it, I'm sure, over time. These ones here were very flat, and I perhaps could have moved it up a little bit using the triangular spacers, and it might have worked a little bit better. But on the second attempt on it, once I understood what was going on, worked very, very well. Size dimensions, it's actually accurate as well. Underneath this face here, I did the same face in a laser etch, and then I reverted over to the cutting portion of the software, and I cut the same material, or I cut the same logo out of vinyl instead of doing it laser. Dimensionally wise, they're both exactly the same. I overlaid one on top of the other, so they are as expected. Okay. So that was my example of my laser, or of my vinyl that I had cut, and that's what I made the face out of here. So this material here actually works quite well. Now, they also included in the kit some of this kind of fake leather that you could cut or engrave different things on as well. So this particular example up here, I used 1%, 15% laser power, and it almost cut all the way through. So if you were just looking to etch it a little bit, I might even do that at about 5%. The laser is surprisingly strong from what I had expected it to be. With a very small change in parameters, this one here I changed it to 25% laser, and it came out almost flawlessly. Great detail, great, you know, the ability when I pulled it out, there was a couple of little stray fibers were still holding the little puppy in there that I was cutting out, but did actually come out very, very easily. No cleanup required, very small details, worked out very, very well. There's a little bit of cardstock or sticker stock here that you could use on it as well. I may experiment on this one a little bit, maybe at a little different point in time. I was doing a fair bit with cardboard, so I decided not to use this one here up. Now there is something that I do want to mention to you, in case anybody asks. There are 2 of these sticky sheets. When you pull them out of these sleeves, there is a plastic film on the bottom and there's a plastic film on the top. When you're doing vinyl, you're actually going to take your vinyl and stick it to this platform, and then this platform is going to stick to the bed inside of the XTOOL laser. The blue one is a light sticky, the pink one is a heavy sticky. So if you're doing something like lace, you're going to want to stick it to the pink one. If you're doing something like vinyl that has a little bit of rigidity to it itself, you're going to want to use it on the blue. The instructions, again, are very well with these. Just bear in mind as to what they are. Keep the plastic wrap that comes off it. When I was finished using mine, I peeled the plastic wrap off. I used it for what I needed to in the machine, and then when I took it back out, I actually put the plastic wrap back on, so you keep that surface sticky. The fun project that I did was I actually used the 3mm basswood blank that they had given us with the XTOOL laser, and I cut out this default pattern that they had. There was actually a download off the website, as you had seen. I downloaded it, put it onto this, and just said, let's cut it through, let's make a toy horse. So the cut through on this was very, very clean. Now, there was a tiny little bit of I think like 1 or 2 little hairs that were still kind of caught when I initially tried to remove this out. But other than that, it was very, very clean, very true all the way through. So as we're dealing with this, or as we pull our horse out, we're going to be putting our horse together and give you something a little bit of a different look for what we were doing on these. So when we put this together, time. According to my masterful puzzle making ability with no instructions whatsoever, we now have a horse. The long and the short of it is, I've actually been very impressed with this machine. It can make everything from toy horses for your children to dog tags, which come included with the kit. I think you'd, at the end of the day, be very actually impressed with this machine and the way that it'll work straight out of the box. Some of the instructions I did have to dig around online to kind of get a little bit further information. Manufacturer's website do carry some additional instructions for it. But other than that, it is one of those items that I think it'd be worth a try. If you think that you have a place for it in your home, I think it'd be a great thing to try out with. Other than that, hope you have a great day. Thank you very much. From 3D Printing Canada, follow, like, and subscribe. Thank you and have a great day.